Hey friends, welcome back to the NeuroSpicy MomPod, your cozy corner of the internet where we talk all things healing, parenting, and the wild ride of raising neurodivergent kids while reparenting ourselves. I'm your host, Austin Marie, mom of two amazing kiddos, Scorpio Stellium, recovering teacher, and your favorite mystical mom of conscious parenting. Today, I am joined by the incredible Kecia Nelson. She's a mom, a licensed clinical social worker who knows firsthand what it's like to feel overwhelmed and unsure how to parent differently than you were raised. Through her work at Wholehearted Parenting, she helps parents shift generational patterns and create emotionally safe homes. And I already know this conversation is going to be so nourishing. Kecia, welcome to the pod. I am so excited you're here. Thank you so much for being here today and for your patience with that time confusion. Why don't you let everyone know a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Well, first of all, I am so grateful that you invited me on because I love to talk about the things that I'm passionate about. And I already know that we're going to talk so much today. It's going to be great. My name is Kecia. I am the mother of two young adults, 18 and 21. So we are in the college era right now. Not an empty nester yet. They're both living at home. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've spent the last 26 years, I hate to tell you that, 26 years in clinical social work, working with children with special healthcare needs and families with mental health issues and just everything kind of in between. So I have a lot of experience working with kids and families and parents with all kinds of different dynamics and backgrounds. And so I'm excited that you have me on the pod today.
I am so excited too. And let's start at the beginning. So, looking back on your journey, what do you believe was your turning point? How did your childhood experiences and nervous system patterns shape the way that you feel like you parent today?
So, thank you for asking that. This is why I'm so passionate about this because I can distinctly remember even before having children that I wanted to do something different. I did not love the way I felt growing up. I didn't know really exactly what the experience was because I was in my early 20s. I just knew that I wanted to do something different and thought just wanting to do something different was just going to magically make it all better. And then I had children, was like, holy shit. Whoa, what is going on here? And so I at first thought I had like a personality problem or that there was something really wrong with me. And I thought I had a parenting problem and didn't realize that I had spent the majority of my adult life sort of in a permanent state of fight or flight, which is what we call, talk about this a lot in my content, is survival mode. Like, what
Mhm.
does that mean? So there are three states of the nervous system, right? So there's fight and flight, which is up here. And then there's like the safe and social, which is where we want to try to hang out most of the time. And then there's the shutdown. And what happens is when we experience some sort of childhood trauma, whether that's physical abuse and neglect, emotional neglect, we can stay stuck in either fight or flight or shutdown. And so that's not where we're meant to live. We're meant to thrive in that middle zone, right? And so we want to be there. So I was anxious, I was depressed, I had an eating disorder, I was always on edge, and I thought that was just like me. I thought I was
Mhm.
just an angry person and I was just all anxious all the time and too much and it was just my personality and it turns out that's not what that really was. um and so I just remember thinking to myself, like, why am I such an angry mom? Like, I didn't understand. And I went through a divorce actually when my kids were very small and I started therapy. And that's when I kind of started really digging in to all the patterns that I was starting to kind of recognize, but still didn't really quite understand what it was.
Yeah. And I mean, thank you for sharing that kind of journey. And I resonate with it so much because I grew up undiagnosed. And but I was also in a not safe or emotionally healthy family living situation. And so, now we call it CPTSD. Growing up, I was just that. Well, she has an attitude. She's always so angry.
Oh, yes.
She's just got that. She's just Portuguese and she's really, spicy. All of those tropes. I was those tropes. And it was through also having my children. And at that time, I was estranged from my family before there was a word for it. I was the weirdo who cut off their family. Who You don't do that. I was doing it before it was
Right.
cool. But there was something in my inner knowing that while I was processing and I went to college, got my psychology degree because I
Of
had to
course.
understand, of course. And so there was just this kind of inner knowing that as I graduated, I was like, moving forward in this next phase, I am no longer going to allow anyone in this space who doesn't believe the trauma I experienced, because I could correlate the fact in my where I was at in my learning that being around people who didn't acknowledge what happened to me made me feel mad and like I had to defend myself. Of course, I still hadn't dug deep enough to understand like I was in fight or flight mode and I actually
Right.
had to get out of it. But I love how it feels like there's just like this moment that happens to people who live their life in a very nervous system conscious way, whereas there's this pivotal moment where we understand like there is a connection between our environment and our internal state, and you kind of have to get a handle on both to be able to regulate yourself. And then it's changed from me being an angry person to me being dysregulated, and then looking throughout my environment or my own patterns and seeing what is dysregulating, and those patterns become the clues. And I love that you really looked and saw like that you had these patterns, but these patterns they're also important information.
I mean, I grew up thinking like just like you, I was just an angry girl and was spicy and I had an attitude and I spoke up a lot and all these things were kind of painted as this almost like this negative picture. Like
Yeah.
you are X, you are these things. And I was like, "Oh, I guess I am those things." But in reality, what I didn't know at the time was like I was actually having a normal response to the dysfunction that was going on. Like, I can only see that retrospectively, like as a young adult, young adolescent, man, really, I think that was a big part of why I ended up having an eating disorder because I was trying to control something. And
Yes.
so oh gosh, yeah. I mean, as kids don't think, my parents are, like like we internalize what's going on. We make it about us.
And my journey has kind of been this roller coaster because the last time I was in a classroom was through transitional kindergarten, and through psychology, understanding growth mindset, fixed mindset, and the power of language, and then learning about the trauma and teaching TK and doing affirmations, it kind of melded into like this understanding of like, we have to be way more careful with our children than we are, especially when they're under the age of 7 and
Uh,
their self concept is what they are absorbing from the adults around them. And I don't know how you were raised. I was raised in a very children are seen, not to be heard.
a percent.
I am the adult, you are the child, which automatically makes me right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're small, I talk, you listen. There wasn't this reciprocal respect is something that is given and earned in the way that I was grown up. And I think that I'm hoping that with all of these amazing moms who are coming to understand regulation because they want to parent differently. Like that's the root of why we
Yes.
looked in, like, why am I so angry? Why am I so mad all the time? And we looked inwards to heal ourselves. And now we're raising children who are just given respect because they're humans, like automatically. Really, I thrive being around collecting women like you because I'm like, yes, yes, like let's get all of these beautiful voices together because I really think what you're doing is healing like our world. I know that's very woo-woo, but I appreciate the way that you look down deep into the nervous system healing of it, because I think that that's really where it starts, and that's really how you build an emotionally safe home.
Absolutely. And a big pivotal point when you talk about environment. Like, I recognized that I felt very differently. Like, this was early on when my kids were little. Like, I felt very differently at home versus like when I was in other environments. And that just was also a clue to me that my marital relationship wasn't a healthy one for my nervous system either. And so that was also another pivotal point. Like, I need to change something about this if I'm also going to be a better mom. Right. And there was all
Yeah.
kinds of guilt and shame about that as far as like divorcing when my kids were super little. But I just knew, like you said, there was a knowing. I just knew something was I needed to do something differently. And that is really hard when you have been taught to just ignore your intuition or but anyway, yeah, when emotions are suppressed and things like that, we're like, am I really overreacting? A lot of self-doubt and self-questioning, my ability to figure things out.
hmm And have a question I want to ask you. Do you feel that once you got to the point of understanding that it all starts with the nervous system regulation, and you do you feel like it changes the way that you see people? Because I agree. Once I got to that knowing in my journey, I divorced my husband. I left my job that I knew deep down was killing me, but like I just felt like if I left, I was a failure. I isolated my social circle down to two. Do you
Mhm.
feel, and like I really almost feel like now the way that I see the world is in such a different way. It's almost more clear to me instead of it being like, am I being dramatic? Is that person me? Like there's less confusion and it's
Yeah.
more clear to me like this is not safe for my body. This is not do you am I making sense here?
I literally just had an experience. So my daughter turned 21 a couple weeks ago. Anyway, this is like a personal story, but I was going to give her a tattoo for her birthday, and her dad freaked out and sent me a really ridiculous text message. And this is a win though. Like I was like, "Oh," and I literally responded, okay. I did, and then I was like, "Wow, that kinda stuff used to just get me so and I literally just was like, "Okay," and then I thought to myself, "I've done so much work on myself and healing practices and reparenting," and, like, so that kinda stuff just doesn't bother me anymore, and I realized that, like you said, you see people differently, like, the difference between us now, like, when one person has continued and one person has stayed exactly the same, it's like, "Whoa." Yeah.
Well,
Wow. You
and
know what I mean?
I'm very much still in that messy middle. My kids are still young. The divorce is still kind of fresh.
Okay.
So I have to be very conscious about reminding myself, like, protect your energy, girl. Like,
Don't. It's not worth
oh my God.
look, I've co-parented for 20 years. I'm just gonna say. I mean, it can be done, and we did it, and I'm very proud of how we showed up, honestly. Um, but yeah, it was hard. It's hard
It's a
when
hard habit to break when you grow up, never having to, like you said, suppressing your feelings don't matter.
there's a lot of gaslighting there, and so that was like, I talking about, like, validating your own feelings, like, no, I'm actually having a normal response to someone being disrespectful or crossing my boundaries and stuff like that, so those kind of tools, those kind of things, practices take a long time.
They do. They do. And they're hard they can be hard learned. It takes a long time to kind of unravel the truth of like what is real truth and then what's their truth and then finding kind of having to parse it. So I understand that and I'm definitely in that messy middle, but it gives me hope that I can get to a point where I would read that and be like, okay. Like that is
No,
the
I know
goal.
my best friend was like, "Oh my god, your response is so hilarious." It's like, literally, "Okay."
That's
I
I
was like,
can't
"There's
wait.
nothing else to say." One of the very best tips that therapist gave me was, especially in dynamics like that, so it makes sense that I got myself into a relationship that mirrored my upbringing dynamics, right?
Mhm.
Isn't that the harsh truth? So this therapist was like, "Okay, somebody like that, what they're trying to do with you is play a tug of war." And what I used to do was I would pull the other end of the rope every single time. And it's like I
Mhm.
had to learn to let go of that because then that left them hanging on I mean, there was no back and forth. And so that was something that I had to learn how to do over and over and over again.
And the shift of like reminding myself like information is like gold. and like you cannot give it away for free. I used to overshare all the time, and well, if they just understood how it made me feel, they would care. And then you have to kind of put that in a box and be like, well, or you could just protect yourself. Well, I want to talk about healing generational trauma, because you talk about healing generational trauma, but I think people sometimes imagine that means big breakthroughs or having like really perfect days. How does healing actually look like in those messy everyday moments of motherhood or reparenting?
So, yeah, like you said, a lot of people, when they think about it, sounds, and it is a monumental task, but what happens is that it is built over time, right? It's built in the micro moment. I'm 20 years out, well, 21 of parenting and a dysfunctional marriage. So, like, where I'm at didn't happen like in a few days. Like, it was built brick by brick, right? And so, yes, my kids are older now and things looked a lot different when they were a little younger and needed me in a different way. Reparenting, really, if you think about it, if you grew up with a dysfunctional family pattern, which many of us did, and you ended up coming into adulthood with an insecure attachment pattern, which at least 50% of people do. And that's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You will probably need to do some reparenting because you didn't come into adulthood with the skill set that you need to have functional relationships,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's with coworkers or a romantic relationship or friendships or parenting, right? There's certain skills that we didn't come into adulthood with. And that's why parenting feels so triggering because your kids are like this little bundle of feelings and a raw nervous system. And it's very triggering to you because you don't know how to handle it. And when your kids do things, for instance, I just posted about this yesterday. It's like one of the reasons why you get so triggered by your kids' behaviors because it's things that you weren't allowed to do. I can specifically remember a lot. My son was very outspoken, which was how I was a lot. And not in a disrespectful way, but just like comfortable sharing his thoughts and opinions or like calling out things like, hey, that wasn't fair. And I wasn't allowed to do those things. I mean, you talked a lot about it's like I'm the adult. It was very much a control based parenting method, I guess, is the way I was raised in the 80s. I'm a little older than you, so I'm Gen X, and my parents are really old. They're like in their 80s. And so they were a silent generation, which is definitely like rule followers, don't question authority. Exactly. Like children are just to be here, they're not to speak out. You don't have your own opinions and none of
Yeah.
that. And so that all carried on into us. And so for me, I'm the third child. I'm a little spicy and I just had a lot of thoughts and I had a lot of opinions and I called a lot of bullshit on things. And that was not very welcome. So when those same things came up in my son, and they're actually things I wanted to cultivate,
Mm-hmm.
but yet it still felt like that was a big old trigger to my nervous system. Like, wait a second, this doesn't feel right because this I wasn't allowed to do these things. So, but it's really jarring because you're like, wait, like here are these things I want my kids to be able to do, but it brings up all these things that you didn't realize were just kind of hanging out in your nervous system. All
Yeah.
this unhealed feelings and things that you never processed, it all comes flooding out.
You cannot hide it. You cannot hide it. I mean, you can, I guess. You can ignore it. You can repress it. You can kind of push it to the side. But parenting exhausts you in a way that nothing else really, in my personal experience, nothing else has. And so all of those coping mechanisms that you have put into place, it just falls apart when suddenly now you are responsible for an entirely new human being who has their own needs, own wants, own sensory issues. And it really took realizing there's things in me that I know I don't want to be like my parents, but they're so deeply ingrained in me that I'm seeing myself act like my parents without me wanting to. And you have to go dig. I mean, you're talking about like rerouting your neural pathways. That is how
Absolutely.
deep this has to go. also some serious confronting that I had to do. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it makes sense that I married the person that I married, that I was
Yeah.
constantly feeling like I had to prove myself to earn the love, that I was so lucky someone would give me any kind of attention, and recognize my own participation in that dance and
Mhm.
recognize that codependency is also a form of manipulation. People pleasing is also a form of manipulation. Have to at some point acknowledge that within yourself. Otherwise, I knew I was just going to. I mean, I kind of saw it in my oldest that he was people pleasing at a very young age. And I think that's what snapped it out of me to be like, nope, like
We're
I,
not doing this.
no, I don't feel, if I don't stop and face it, it's just gonna trickle right down to my kiddos. And it's hard being that person to stop and be like, you know what, I'm gonna feel this because, like you said, it hides in our bodies.
Right. And so you were talking about coping mechanisms, like when our nervous system is wired for survival, right? Not thriving. When we have insecure attachment patterns as children, what we do is that we create these survival mechanisms that are super smart in childhood, right? We people please, we overfunction, we're hyper independent. Like all of these things are super, super smart adaptations when we're kids, because when we're kids, we want that connection. We
It's
will
literally where our lives literally
we
depend on
will
it.
literally abandon ourselves to maintain the connection. So we create all these dysfunctional patterns, but they work. They work in childhood because they maintain that connection, whether it's healthy or not, right? But then we bring all of those things like people pleasing, hyper independence, all of those numbing, all that stuff. We bring that with us, and then we have a little child, like you said, who has all of their own, like, they're developing. They're literally like an underdeveloped nervous system. And so we have our childlike coping patterns, and then we're clashing with a child who's
Yeah,
actually a child. And we're the ones that have to figure out, oh shit, like this isn't working. Where do all these things come from? And how do I rewire that? We want to
yeah,
rewire ourselves to create our own secure attachment. And that's where the reparenting comes in, is because if you have insecure attachment patterns from childhood, you have to rewire those to be able to show up for your kids in a secure way. Otherwise, like you
100%.
said, you're going to just keep repeating the insecure attachment patterns.
Well, yeah, and I worry about that all the time. I mean, I knew about attachment styles because of my degree in psychology and my hyper focus on the nervous system. And so my first was a NICU baby. And
Okay.
I was so freaked out that because I didn't have a natural birth and I wasn't going to release all those hormones and I wasn't chest to chest with him for a little bit, I was very worried that I was not going to be able to have a secure attachment with him. But really, it was my own anxieties. I was creating all of this anxious, and I cannot lie and say that my oldest is not an anxious little person. Like there is anxiety within him that we are now trying to heal away. If you don't know about attachment and you don't know about regulation and you don't know that the role of the mother is to regulate your child's nervous system, but I didn't have that language. So instead, I was a bad mom.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
And so I think that this reparenting and this deep understanding of knowing your nervous system and how that creates an attachment style with your children, I think you're healing so many different parts of this like wound that we have of people feeling like they're not good enough or not attached, or because like we don't even know that it's a real thing that we need to be conscious of. And I think like it shifts from being like I can't get my baby to stop crying, I'm a terrible mother, to like I'm dysregulated, I need someone to regulate my nervous system because I can't regulate this baby. And it just being a knowing that like this is how our nervous systems are. We are connected to each other, and I respond to you and you respond to me, and like this is how our nervous systems build and learn how to regulate.
So this is 100% why I have my business, because I mean, I don't know about you, but when I had kids, all of the literature was all about behaviorism. How do I get my kid to do X?
Yes.
And that's where it's all right, because that is a control mindset. It's like I have control over my kid. No one actually has control over anyone else. Like, I'm not inside my kid's brain and I can't, I am in control of me. I am in
Mm-hmm.
control of how I show up and how I respond. I am not in control of someone else. So we have years and years of parenting books that are all about behaviorism and like, how do I control my kid's behavior? And that's where it all goes south.
Yes.
Right? We have to flip that, and it's like, make it about the connection, not about controlling, but about the connection, right? And again, there's a lot of people who mistake this for passive parenting, permissive parenting. You can ask my kids, I am not a passive or permissive parent. I have a
No.
funny story about when my kids were little and we were with my nephews and nieces, and I was the only adult in the group, and my son was about 6. We were in the middle of St. Louis. We were walking through downtown, and the other kids were kind of acting out and stuff. And he turns to them, he goes, "There is only one person in charge here, and that is my mother." And I'm like, he was 6 years old, you
Love
know.
that. I
I
love
know,
that.
right? But it's not about being boundaryless. It's we have to have high empathy and high structure, right? That's where secure attachment comes from because we are literally leading our child through the ups and downs of life and we are
Mm.
there ready. And so instead of trying to figure out how I can control my child, we have to figure out how can I connect? And that means starting to connect with myself first. When
Yes.
we have insecure attachment patterns, we have to learn how to come back. I know, like you said earlier, it sounds woo woo. Like, how do I come back to myself first? How do I steady myself so that I can be literally like a life preserver?
Yeah.
Right, because
Yes.
our kids are kinda like floating in the ocean, and we're there to kind of give them a life preserver so they can kind of float, in the ups and downs of life, and if we're like this all over the place and we're dysregulated or I'm in fight or flight all the time or I'm in shutdown all the time, they don't know where the anchor is, right? They're like, "Huh?" You know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's where, really parenting is. I know people kind of struggle with this a little bit because we're still stuck in the behaviorism stuff, but it's really about how do I reparent myself so that I have the tools that I need to provide my kid that home base that's safe.
100%.
Right, because really, our job as a parent is to launch our kids out into the world, into competent, resilient adults, right? And we are safety. So as children grow and develop, they start creeping a little bit away from home, and then they come home, and then they go a little further, and then they come back, right? And like we are their safety net. We are their safe place to be. And so as they grow and develop, we want them to go further and further, but know that they can always come home because we're going to provide that comfort and safety for them to get through the struggles of life.
Yes, I love that. And I love that imagery of of being like the home base.
Mhm.
Like the basics when you're learning about attachment in psychology, they show you different babies and how they react to when their mothers enter and exit the room. And it's true, it's the babies who have that secure attachment. They're not next to their mom the whole time. It
Uh-uh.
doesn't mean that you have a strong attachment because your child's right next to you all of the
No.
time. That's not what secure attachment means. And I love that you kind of put that imagery there is that we're going to be here no matter what, and then they can come back to us when they need a little boost of confidence. And I think also when you remove the behaviorism and the control aspect, you're also removing them as their own person and their behavior as like a person, like a personal attack on you. I think a lot of parents take their children's behavior and their personality as almost like a reflection of how good of a parent they are. It's like, it's interesting that in our culture, we don't treat children like full humans. It's like they're little humanoids that we just kind of see and we know we're supposed to love and they're precious and all of that stuff. But like when it comes down to it, we do not really treat children with full autonomy, with full, like that they come into this world already as a full human. And that as a parent, we are supposed to be that safe, stable home base that
Mhm.
loves them as they are, wherever they're at, and that we just, stay there for them so that they can have a safe place to land when they need us.
I can't tell you how many times when you said, like, the more work you've done, the more difference that you can see. Oh my gosh, it just sometimes it actually is painful when I see like people in the store responding to their kids in certain ways. I'm like, oh my God. Okay.
It breaks my heart too.
I know, but it's like, how many times have I heard people say, like, I have bad kids? And I oftentimes will redirect people and say, you actually have kids that are acting the way a 3-year-old is supposed to be, or the way a 6-year-old. Like, actually, that's really developmentally on track because a 6-year-old isn't supposed to know X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
or a 3-year-old. Of course, they have a lot of feelings, but they don't know how to deal with them. And there's also been, the whole myth about children learning how to self-regulate is
Mm.
bull crap, is such crap. I hate that.
It
Like,
makes me so sad for
they're like,
my
"Oh, just put
oldest.
them in the corner and let them self-regulate." And it's like,
And
that is not how that works.
no, scientifically not correct. And it's wild that that is the foundation of parenting. Have them
Yeah.
cry them to sleep.
Yeah.
No, like, okay, you
No.
know what? Try telling that to a
Or
gorilla mother. I
send
dare you. Take a chimpanzee's baby from that mom. And when that chimp starts crying, tell that mom, no, no, no. No, no, let them self-soothe. Like, we are the only animals that take a baby
and
from the
let
mom and be like, don't you nurture that baby.
don't
Don't you do it. You let that baby feel in its body like that baby really truly feels like it's going to die. Like, that is why it is crying. Like, that is the biological way that a baby says it needs its caregiver. And from the get-go, we're like,
I know.
we don't care about your feelings. It breaks my heart. I mean, I would get called a helicopter mom because I wouldn't let him cry it out very long. But even the amount of time that I did leave him cry it out, like, I'm going to have to apologize for that in therapy later in life. Like, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think it's really sad that we do that. So I want to kind of transition because one of my favorite things that you teach about is this secure attachment. And I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into what those 4 S's that you teach are. And if you can like walk us through what those are, how parents can start taking those baby steps towards creating that emotionally safe home, even if they don't know what that looks like themselves.
So everybody's first of all, I want to give people, you did ask me a question, like moms that are worried that they are messing things up. Okay, first of all, you are going to mess up. Let's just start with that, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I mean that in a way like I struggled so much with perfectionism. It was one of the coping mechanisms that I developed in childhood. Like, if I can be this way, then I will be approved and I will be, I will be
I'll
loved.
be
And
good.
yeah, I'll be a good kid,
Yeah.
and I'll look, everything was gonna look good on the outside. I'll be great. And so that was something that I struggled with a lot, knowing that building a secure attachment does not mean that you are a perfect parent. It means that as long as we are meeting our children's, as long as we are in tune to our children's needs and meet their needs at least, I want to say it's 30, I think it's 30% of the time. It's like really low bar. I mean, this is like good news though. Like, people worry that if they don't get everything just right, and it doesn't have to be that.
Say it again. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be
30%,
perfect.
30%.
We could do that.
Think about your child as like we're tuning into a radio frequency, right? So each kid, right? And this is the lovely thing about parenting. I mean, each kid is going to have their own radio station, right? But it's our job to tune in to that dial, right? Because they're telling us who they are, right? We don't get to decide that. They are telling us who they are. And so we need to tune in and figure that it's our job. It's not their job. It's our job to attune to our child and meet their specific needs. So, secure attachment, you asked me about the 4 S's. So, seen. Our kids need to know that we see what is going on their internal. I see what's happening inside you, right? So they need to know that they feel seen, that their experiences are valid and they matter. Then they need to be soothed. And this is where the nervous system stuff comes in. Like, I can help you. I can be your calm when you're
Yeah.
upset.
Yes.
That is our job. We are their regulation station. I love that. We are their so they need to come plug into us when they're upset.
Yeah.
When they're
I
here,
tell my kids, do you need to come borrow some calm? You want to
Yeah,
come.
exactly. We need to come borrow that from which is why if we are in survival mode and we're up here or
We have
we're down
nothing. I
here,
have nothing to give.
yeah, I can't regulate someone else. Like, and so that is why we have to learn. And again, it's not about being the Zen person who's never, upset. That is not the goal at all. Because the goal is that we can move in and out of the three states of the nervous system. Like, obviously, if something negative happens to you, you need to respond and you need
Hmm.
to be pissed off about something or, whatever. But the goal is not to live there. The goal is to have the appropriate response. And then, right, our nervous system tells us what we need to do. Like way back when, if a bear came around, you'd be like, oh shit, and I'm in fight or flight, and you'd take off, right? But we generally don't have those kinds of experiences on the day to day. Some people have like trauma experiences, but we don't live in the caveman days.
Yes.
Right. And so we shouldn't be living in fight or flight or shut down all the
Yeah.
time. So we want to we increase our window of tolerance. So this safe and social state, we want that window to be really big and have the fight or flight or the shutdown be minimal,
Hmm.
right? Like we might have to go there temporarily because we had an experience, but then we can regulate and we can come back to that middle ground, right?
Yeah.
And our kids' window of tolerance is really small and they're developing it, right? But it's our job to be that calm station for them when they're upset. So they need to be able to be soothed by us when they are having dysregulation. Um, the third S is safety. So, like, you can trust that I am not going to hurt you or shame you or belittle you. Like, you are safe with me.
Hmm.
Trust me, I'm not going to ridicule you. I'm not going to shame you, gaslight you, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not going to minimize what you're going through. You
This
feel
safe space is literally safe space for any and all of your, as long as you're being safe and not hurting mama.
right,
you know,
right.
we will hold space for those feelings. That's such an important part of it.
Right. And then the last one is secure. You can rely on me. I will be there consistently. That doesn't mean perfectly, it just means consistently. So, like, I can pretty much guarantee that when I go to my parent, they're going to meet my need on a consistent basis.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people who grew up with parents very inconsistent. Like, sometimes the needs were met and sometimes the parents were blowing up or maybe they weren't there or maybe the parent had an addiction and they were struggling themselves and so they weren't reliable.
Hmm.
And that's where we get that insecure attachment pattern that forms because of the consistency. It's like, well, I don't know if this time what kind of response I'm going to get from my parent. Last time they blew up at me, this time they're nice. It's very confusing
Yeah.
to developing nervous system. So that's where that safety and security comes in.
And I love that you explain that window of tolerance, it does need to be explicitly taught. You do need to expect that your children are going to have
Yeah,
not a lot of wiggle room in terms of what you should expect for them to
correct.
tolerate.
Right.
And that it actually, there's also space where I will look at my youngest and I would be like, this is a time where you need to practice discomfort. You need to sit in uncomfortability for a little bit. You just need to practice it because it's not always going to be all your way all of the time. And you do need to they need to practice flexibility within reason. But to
Right.
expect children to be able to handle and be tolerant all of the time, that's asking more than we do of other grown adults.
And I can't remember, it's been a couple weeks, but I actually did make a post about what feelings are actually for. Like when you grew up in a family that dismissed feelings or like, oh, just put on a happy face and let's be happy all the time. And we weren't allowed to be angry or disappointed or any of those things. Feelings are actually signals. They tell us something is amiss, right? It's like, I'm mad because somebody crossed a boundary. And that's a normal response to somebody crossing your boundary. So it's our job, like you said, to help our kids sit with whatever feeling they're having. They need to cry it out. They need to yell or whatever. All feelings are okay. Now, not all behaviors are okay. Kicking your brother in the face is not okay. If you're mad, like, it's okay to be mad.
Yeah.
And then we sit with them in that until that passes. And
Yeah.
then, because the job of a feeling is also to be processed, like we are supposed to process those things and then let it out. Like
Yeah.
that feelings have a beginning, middle, and end. But then
Yeah.
when we don't let them end and process them, they stay stuck.
Yes, and I love how you emphasize that, like, you don't have to do it perfectly. It doesn't mean showing up the right way, saying
Every
all of the
single
right things, like, that is not realistic, but I love the statement that the trauma comes with not talking about it. The trauma comes from not processing it out and holding it and keeping it quiet, because then that anger that I was feeling, which, like you said, was a normal reaction to a response I was having, because it was never processed, it was never discussed, it turned into shame. Ugh,
Yes.
I'm angry all the time, and so
What's
I
wrong
think,
with
yes, yeah. And so I think it's a, and how many people don't understand that feelings and behaviors are separate. You can accept all feelings. You can feel whatever you want to feel. That's fine. You can't behave on it. You can't behave on all of them, but you can teach children safe behaviors to
Mhm.
process all of those feelings. And it is something that is going to have to be explicitly taught. Kids don't just know how to do it in the same way that they're not going to be able to just regulate themselves. Like, these are things that you have to, this is kind of the parenting and parenting.
So we are, yeah, I mean, we are truly emotional coaches also. And that is as scary as hell to people who grew up with emotional suppression and all that stuff. Cause it's like, well, I don't even know what my own feelings are. And so, how am I supposed to teach my kid this? And that's why so many of us need support,
Yes.
right? I mean, I wish everyone had access to a parenting coach. I think that everyone should get special training and special classes. You're literally raising little human beings. We get nothing, we get literally nothing,
Yeah.
to help us through all this stuff. And so no wonder we have a generation of people who are all in therapy because nobody got any kind of parenting support.
Yeah.
Nobody learned anything about any of this. And we've all been kind of trying to figure this out. Like, why isn't that an expectation? Why isn't that something that we just provide to everyone?
I mean, I think that it's kind of scary that as a TK teacher, it was considered radical that I was teaching metacognition, like, that I was,
Right.
that it was radical that I was explicitly telling my class, you can say no to grown-ups. Absolutely. No is a complete sentence. You don't actually have to hug your grandma if you don't want to hug your grandma.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a big one that the people were not happy about that. And it's just, like you said, like the reframing of taking kids and controlling kids' behavior. Well, then you're looking at a kid who's saying no to you and you're being like, oh my God, they're not listening to me. I'm not a good parent. They don't respect my authority. They don't expect me as a parent. Instead, I try to reframe it like, if your child cannot practice saying no to you, then who? If your child doesn't feel safe enough to assert themselves at 2 or 3, let them, especially little girls, I'm like, let them say no. Let them practice the no in a very, like, confident way.
In a
Then
safe place.
in a
Yeah.
safe place, how do you expect them to say no to a stranger who is coming to them with authority? This is a way to also protect your child in the world by letting them speak their little minds out and say no. And the big part, which is hard for my Portuguese family, is that when they say no to affection, to not guilt them for it,
Oh,
to
yeah.
allow and respect the no with, like, no, like, kind of like as a neutral poker face, which is hard for me because I'm like, but I'm your mom. Like, I want all of the hugs. But it gives them a sense of, like, don't you want your child to think and just know in their bones that their body is their body, that no
Yes.
one can touch them no matter what. And, like, that's just the foundation, and that their nervous system is actually supposed to feel safe. And if you make me feel unsafe, that's a you problem and not a me problem.
Well, and the other thing that we do, what that does is it teaches kids that we were talking about our intuition and like sort of swimming through this, like, am I right? Am I wrong? Am I over dramatizing this? Like, we want to teach kids that, like, yeah, I mean this. And it's builds self trust. Like, if we're constantly teaching them to override their intuition, their response, they're like, it really, it's very confusing.
Yeah.
they're not learning how to trust themselves to make decisions, to say no, to have healthy boundaries.
And that coaching is so important because, like, you can know that in your mind, but it's insidious ways that we break that trust by being constant. Be careful, careful, don't do that. Or, like, you're fine. It's fine. It's like there's little ways that we create that self doubt. And having a parenting coach or someone there to guide you to be able to just make those subtle shifts in our language, in the way that we parent, it will change the outcome and, like, the way that this child will perceive themselves in the world around them. It's a big difference.
You want to talk about, so there's kind of like three, when I was talking about high structure and high empathy, when we have high structure and no empathy, that's control. That's where we came from.
That's what we're living through right now.
That's the control-based parenting. And then you have high empathy and no structure. That's
Mhm.
permissive. And that is not good either. I've talked about this a lot. We don't want either extreme. We need to have a balance, right? So we want to teach about connection and empathy and feelings and all of that, but also having high structure. Like we have rules and we have boundaries and all of that. It has to be high on both things.
Mhm.
Because without one or the other, we either have control or permissiveness, both of which are not healthy places to be.
No, no. I mean, I think we all have those days where we're trying to be like gentle and aware parents, but the laundry's piled up, someone's melting down, and our own nervous system is just fried. So, what would you suggest? How do you personally balance reparenting yourself with the actual day to day chaos of motherhood? Like when you are dysregulated yourself, like what is the one thing that you would tell a client, like, start here?
Start small. I mean, I know it sounds really trite, but really, again, it's not about these massive transformational moments. Most of us learned how to suppress our needs, right? In a dysfunctional family, it's like, I'm fine. It's not a big deal. What we want to do, one small thing that you can start doing for yourself is start literally checking in with yourself. We think about self care as like bubble baths and getting our nails done, and those things are great. But I want you to think about self care as like checking in on your needs. Like, how am I actually doing? What do I need right now? Those two things. And sometimes it can be as small as like eating a healthy meal or making an appointment that you've been avoiding or taking 5 minutes to sit outside in the sunlight, nature. There's I mean, there's just so much that's involved in it, but those are the small things for people who grew up in a very control-based parenting environment. We oftentimes have overridden our own needs and we don't even know what they are. So
Yeah.
with checking in with ourselves, like, how do I actually feel right now? What do I actually need right now?
I think that those are such great grounding questions that I think I'm definitely going to have to steal from you because it's in those moments of dysregulation where you're kind of just like, "Ugh," you almost need that anchor. And I think that that's a great way to anchor yourself is just to be like, okay, how do I feel right now? Just that basic question of like, okay, what am I really feeling right now? Because as a neurodivergent, like when people say like, oh, do self-care, I'm like, I have sensory needs. Like that, half of the things that you're saying gross me out and feel, and plus, like, are you telling me now I have to do 7 different steps for this new routine that's supposed to relax me, but that's not how my brain works? Like, I love that you're reframing self-care as like, instead of it being like another task I have to do, to actually just like turning that mirror inwards and just checking in with yourself. That's doable. That's something that I can implement today. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, when we have grown up overriding our own needs, right? We kind of have that self talk of like, my needs don't really matter. And when we start meeting ourselves with those small things, right? Then it sort of rewires, reparents. It tells us like, my needs actually matter. And I can provide that for myself. I can give myself those things. I can eat a healthy meal. I can sit outside for 5 minutes. And I know it sounds super small, but like when you start doing that on a regular basis, then you're also kind of rewiring that internal dialogues. Like, my needs do matter. I do need to do this for myself. And then also your kids see you doing those things for yourself. I don't know about you, but I grew up with a mom who was super self sacrificing, like always overdoing it, always meeting everybody else's needs, barely having time for herself. And so like when I saw like that, is that what we want the image of motherhood to look like for our
Yeah.
kids? No. Do I wanna teach my daughter said the other day, well, both my kids are in college, and they started classes last month, and she had been volunteering for Habitat for Humanity over the summer, and she's taking 16 hours of college classes, okay? She was like, "I don't know that I'm gonna have time to do the volunteering," and I said, "Please take a lesson from your mother. Don't overdo it." Like, I used to just overdo everything because I thought I had to do everything. And I was like, please don't push yourself. Like, there's going to be plenty of time for you to volunteer over Christmas break or in the summer next year. Like, you don't have to cram it all in.
Yeah. And I think that when you are living with your nervous system health in mind, for me, it kind of stopped being a personal failure thing and more in terms of like energy. And even with my children, it's like, oh, babe, ooh, my energy levels are really low. And maybe I can't play with you outside, but you want to play like an inside card game. And I think that it is a valuable tool to teach our children to just be tuned in. And
Uh,
so they don't become like me, where it's, I was that quintessential child who we never had to worry about you. You were just always this little
I
grown up
know.
who grew up to be that adult who now cannot function. You know, I went through a total autistic a burnout. I am still healing in my burnout. I didn't think it'd be this long. I'm like 3 years out and I'm still healing from burnout, but because our nervous system cannot hold that type of intensity our entire lives.
Yeah.
And if we are in fight or flight, people pleasing, checking the room, making sure everyone is comfortable so that we can be safe, it's going to frazzle and you're going to get to the point of burnout.
Right, exactly. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy that you said that because I literally had a mom say that to me the other day. I grew up and my parents, she was one of 10 children. And she said, my parents used to tell me all the time, we never had to worry about you. And I was like, oh gosh. And she's a bundle of anxiety and like over functioning. And like, I was like, oh man, that's so hard. And she struggles to ask for what she needs because she was always told, we never had to worry about you. So that, internal dialogue became, well, you don't need to ask for help,
Yes, being lovable is not needing anything.
being
That
easy.
yes, being easy. I think that, when teaching your daughter, you don't have to continue to volunteer if you're having all of this other stuff that you're dealing with. Like you're also teaching her to like protect her energy. She still has a whole life to live. She can't burn out right now. You don't have to give it all you got all the time. Rest is actually a part of being a human too. And rest is a part of what our cycle should be.
Yeah, I just filmed a reel about that. I like that was something that I struggled with so much because I didn't my mom overgave. My dad was a chronic workaholic. And so it was like rest was just not in the vocabulary. And so that was something that was super triggering for me when my kids were having fun or just relaxing. It pissed me off because I was like, I mean, seriously, I was like, what? I couldn't figure out why I was so angry. I was like, they're just literally having fun. But it was like that wasn't allowed. I wasn't allowed to just chill and have a good time and have fun. We always had to be doing something, working, producing, being productive, and all of that stuff. And so, oof,
Like you said, like if you don't look in and heal those things, it will leak out. I was having to confront like, why do when my kids start laughing and getting really like loud, I get anxious. And
mhm,
and my reaction is to stop it. And I'd have to be like, why am I they're laughing. They're having a great time. Like I'm just feeling anxious that someone's going to get hurt. And I'm just feeling that way because when I was young and we would get loud and rambunctious, we would be yelled at. So my little self is just trying to protect them from getting yelled at, but like you're the grown up now.
right.
There
You're the
doesn't
whole
have to
ass
be,
adult, right?
yeah, there's no other grown up coming to yell, dude. You're that grown up now and you have to heal it so that you don't repeat it. And I know I'm taking up so much of your time, but do you mind if I ask you one more question before
I
we
don't
go?
mind at all.
Okay, great. So I really want to continue talking about this emotional regulation because I think that this is the heartbeat of breaking the cycle. Can you walk us through your 4-step exercise for identifying emotional triggers that you go through with your clients?
So, like you were saying, awareness of our patterns and our triggers is one of the first things that we have to do to figure out how we then change, right? It's like you can't change what you don't know. And so identifying like where we are triggered, and everyone's triggers are going to look different depending on what your upbringing was like. But that is one of the very first things that we look at is like, where am I triggered? So identifying your emotional triggers. Trigger is something that kind of sends you into that fight or flight or that shutdown, right? So the first thing is to notice when I went from being okay to not okay. I was fine here, but now I'm pissed off.
Mm.
What happened? What's going on? And so, was it the way somebody talked to me? Was it something that somebody did? Was it a comment somebody made? And so, we want to notice like, that's how we start noticing patterns. And then I want to notice what thoughts or feelings that I had when that person said that, or like, when I used to see my kids rest, I would get angry, right? So that's starting to notice like these are the feelings I'm having, like they don't respect me. Look at them. They're lazy. That, like what are the things that I'm telling myself are going on? So those stories and the thoughts and the feelings are pointing us towards the old survival patterns that then we want to name the nervous system state. So again, this is all like when we learn, and some of these things I'm talking about, like we go through a whole like 6-week thing. So like some of the stuff I'm assuming that people have already learned. So we name the nervous system state, which is like, was I mad? Was I fiery? Which is fight. Was I restless? Did I want to escape?
Mm-hmm.
Did I freeze? Did I feel foggy? Did I feel numb? Those kind of things. So that tells us like there are different things that we do to regulate fight or flight versus kind of the numbing state or the
Freeze and fawn.
correct. And so there are different kind of activities that kind of bring us from either up here or down here back into that middle zone. And then the hardest one of all is like getting to the root of where that feeling came from. It's like, when have I felt like this before? And for me, it was like, oh, okay, I am angry about somebody resting. Well, maybe that's because I was never allowed to do that. Like these are all things that we do. It's like generational mapping. We look at patterns. We look at things that we learned in childhood that are now connected to why we are mad. Like if we are disproportionately emotional about something right now,
Yeah.
like it's like your kid spills milk and you're raging. That doesn't go hand in hand. Like it shouldn't. If somebody spilt something, it's like kids spill something. Like what's the connection there? Or
Yeah.
like, I am really angry that my kids are having fun, which doesn't make any sense at all. So, if you're having a disproportionate reaction to something that's going on, it's a real clue to you that it's a lot deeper than that present moment. There's something that is bringing up an old memory for you in some way that's in here because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
If the emotional response you're having doesn't make sense to the moment, it's probably something historical, like else that's going on.
I love that. So it's almost like not only are you a parent coach, but you're almost like walking with the parents through their shadow work to be able to
Yep.
understand. You're really kind of walking with them to be able to see their behavior as clues. You're kind of being a detective with this and training people how to see their behaviors instead of just good or bad as indications of how you can see where that story is coming from. I'm sure difficult task to kind of walk people through.
It is, but it's also very rewarding because I literally dug myself through all of this, like for my own self.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of freaking work. So that's why I'm really like passionate about providing it to other people so that you can get there a lot quicker than I did, right?
Yes. I love that.
That was such a crap ton of work and like therapy and somatic work and breath work. And I mean, just yoga. I mean, just years and years of work, reading podcasts and all of that and like condensing that down so that it's sort of like a cheat sheet, right? It's like a cheat
Yes.
for all the years of work that I did. And people think, well, wait, when I hear parenting coach, I think, aren't you going to tell me how to make my kid behave? No, I am not. I am not going to give you behavior hacks. I am not going to give you tips on how to get your kid to XYZ because that's just not That's not where it's at. Behaviorism is not where we're at.
Well, hopefully, this is the beginning of just like this huge worldwide change of how we
That's
view
right.
parenting.
That
Because
is right.
no, I'm not going to be talking about your kids. Actually, we're going to be talking about you. And that's where the good parenting comes from, is from how are you doing? Where are you at? And wow,
Mhm.
like you are really doing some powerful work here. And I feel so pulled and connected to people who have come from difficult situations, who did not grow up in safe, secure, regulated situations or healthy systems. And I think what drew me to you was the aspect of you taking all of these lessons hard learned and wanting to alchemize it to being like, I did all the hard work figuring this out. Like,
Yes.
let me hold your hand and walk this
Let
through you.
me help you.
Yeah. And I
Yes.
think, like, for me, I felt where my journey lies is to more platform more experienced people like yourself in
Mhm.
being able to offer up services because, like yourself, like, my healing was clawed by
Yeah.
myself and in all different directions. And yeah, I feel like I've been in therapy my whole life. And yet my
Yes.
healing has really been condensed in these last 3 years. And it's important to me to platform other people who have real understanding of how to ground yourself, and so that you can not only live a grounded, regulated life, but so that hopefully all of our children will. And in like 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to have a completely different world that we're living in with everyone just walking around regulated. And
Yeah,
can
actually,
you
my
imagine?
daughter told me, oh, I know what it was. We were having a conversation one night, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure in like 20 years, you're going to tell me a story about something I said. And she goes, actually, I have a story for you right now. And I was like,
No.
oh shit, okay. And she proceeded to tell me something, and I was like, oh, okay. I am 50 years old, okay, and I just now started talking to my parents about this stuff. Like, I'm freaking 50 years old. My daughter's 20 at the time and telling me this, and I'm like, that's it though. Like,
Yes.
that's part of the breaking. Like, she can tell me more in real time now. She was younger when this story happened, but like, I feel like that's the difference, is that my kids can tell me now more in real time when something happens, and then we can talk about it. And we can,
Yes.
like you said, the trauma lies in the not talking about things. We can talk about it, we can process it, we can repair. That's what relationships are about, not holding resentments and like not, my family never talked about anything.
No.
So again,
Let's normalize a good relationship is a relationship in where your kids can call you out. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, and that kind of frees you from the whole perfectionism of parenting if you
right.
just acknowledge that I'm going to make a lot of mistakes.
That's right. You're also like, when we do though, that's just modeling for kids that your humanity, right? I don't mean, I don't know about you, but it was like growing up, it was like, oh, the parent could do no wrong. And it's like, well, that's not what that's not life. Like, people make mistakes. People
Yeah.
learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. I'm so appreciative of you coming and sharing your wealth of knowledge. And I want to make sure that before we wrap up here, listeners are able to connect with you and to learn more about wholehearted parenting. If they're interested in maybe having you as a parent coach, how can they get a hold of you or find out a little bit more about what you have to offer?
So I'm on Instagram as Wholehearted Parenting. I'm always answering DMs. I also have a stand link in my bio where you can book a call with me. It's free, and we can kind of talk. I call it my Mapping Motherhood Clarity Call, where we can kind of talk about where your current struggle is, what kind of things that you've already done, and kind of where you want to go and how I can help you get there. Like I said, I've done a lot of the dirty work myself, and I've mapped it all out. And so what I want to do is walk that path with people, because it is hard. And there is a lot of DIY that you can do. There's a lot of things that you can do, but there's also so much that you can only do on your own, right? Helpful to have that safe container. And we deserve that, right? We deserve that support. I wish that I had a parenting coach or somebody that, stepped with me through all that. Because like you said, I kind of like had to figure it all out. And that's a lot of work.
It is. And I admire you for doing that. There's going to be so many resources, I'm hoping, for women and for children and for parents who have options so that they don't have to walk it alone. Because it's a lot harder. It's a lot scary. It's a lot slower. It's a lot slower too.
Very slow. And we're also not meant to do life on our own, right? Like,
No.
aren't. And I mean, we've just kind of become that way with our current society. But like you said, I'm hoping to build more community so that people do feel more connected and don't. That's where we get a lot of shame, is that when we don't speak our stories, when we don't talk about the things that make us feel this way, then we do feel very isolated and we feel shame and we feel alone. Well, when in reality, it's like, it's not just you. It's so many women, so many moms, so many people who are experiencing these things. I mean, I can remember for the longest time, I grew up emotionally neglected and I couldn't say it. I don't know. It was so hard. I had so much shame. Like, I internalized so much about that. Like, what is it about me? And then it was making that community, talking to other people, reading about things. It was like, oh, this isn't me. There's not something inherently wrong with me. Like, this is a whole thing.
And there's actually names for this. There's
Right,
actually a word.
I know there's actually, I mean, it's crazy. And there's so much about when we can dissipate shame, it just opens up the doors, right? I mean, shame keeps us silent.
I agree.
Speak our stories, speak our truth, tell our experiences, share with other people, hold other people's hands. I know, woo-woo. But that's what we need.
I am all about the woo-woo healing up in here.
Give me all the woo. Give me it all.
Well, I am just grateful that now you are a part of the NeuroSpicy community and that people can reach out to you. And if they have, any special questions that I don't have an idea, now I can reach out to you. Hopefully we'll get to see you in the message boards and you can share some of your wisdom. But this really has been such a beautiful and grounding conversation, Kecia. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
So much for reaching out to me and having me on. Love this kind of stuff.
Thank you so much for being here. And to everyone listening, remember that healing happens in tiny everyday moments. Be gentle with yourself. If you love this episode, please follow and leave a review or a comment. It really helps us reach more NeuroSpicy mamas who need this space. And if you want to go deeper, please join our Patreon community for bonus content, video episodes, and behind-the-scenes episodes and community boards. See you next week on the NeuroSpicy MomPod. Stay safe and try to stay regulated. Ta-ta!